This podcast discusses a non-stop, thrilling adventure fantasy series set in the brutal and competitive world of a military college for dragon riders, which includes potential spoilers for all published material. This episode includes elements regarding injury, death, chronic illness, and graphic language, including sexually explicit language. Listeners who may be sensitive to these elements, cross the parapet at your own risk and prepare to enter the Wing Raiders. Welcome to the Wing Raiders, where we deep dive into the Empyrean series chapter by chapter, theorize and overanalyze. I'm Abby.
I'm John.
And I'm Cassie.
And today we are covering Fourth Wing Chapter 4. Friendly reminder that all published material is fair game, so continue at your own risk. You will be spoiled. And before I send it over to our resident scribe, John, I am going to take us to Battle Brief because I have a little bit of podcast news. And this is just very lightly related to the podcast, but I wanted to share this with you on the pod. I went to the dentist last week, and during the dentist appointment, we were talking about books, and he asked me what the best fantasy book I've recently read is, and I'm like, well, Fourth Wing. And my dentist, he is like the most soft-spoken, kindest, sweetest guy, and he goes, I love Fourth Wing. I haven't read Onyx Storm yet, but me and all the hygienists talk about it all the time. And
is he a
I'm like,
younger
well,
guy?
Actually, he's younger, yeah,
okay.
But I just never would have expected him to read it. Just, he doesn't give me the vibes that this is the kind of book that he would be into. And yeah, so we chatted about it. I told him about the podcast. I gave them the Insta handle. So, shout out to Dr. King if you happen to be listening to this. I apologize for my, not my literal dirty mouth, but my figurative dirty mouth in the podcast, but he will be happy to hear that I have moved my, flossing picks, my flossers to the nursery, and I'm using them more frequently. Nice. So. All right, so moving on, now I will send it over to John, our resident scribe, to break down the epigraph.
We have another wonderful epigraph, but one that doesn't get referenced very much after this book because, you know, priorities become a little bit more different as we approach things. We have Major Offendra's Guide to the Writer's Quadrant, unauthorized edition, which I still think means that this is a book that was written for writers with no scribe oversight. Some truth can be trusted in this. We have The Sparring Ring is where writers are made or broken. After all, no respectable dragon would choose a writer who cannot defend themselves, and no respectable cadet would allow such a threat to the wing to continue training. Bum, bum, bum.
I like the pun on broken. Where it's not just like either you make it or break it, but like you might literally
get broken
bones. I also find it really interesting that this epigraph is for chapter 4
and not chapter 5
when they do not get to the sparring mat in this chapter.
No, but like she has to be a little careful with what she like. Rebecca Yarros is definitely trying to give us a little bit of a hint without overemphasizing, so I think it was a very important distinction to put a chapter before we actually get there. But when we get to chapter 6, I'm gonna call y'all out for the fact that you keep giving me the Dain chapters.
It's unintentional, I promise you.
And I keep saying it. Riddick is my boyfriend, and no one else can have him. Like, he can have all the one-night stands he wants. I am the ride or die, motherfucker. But I might be falling for Dain again.
Let's make it happen. Let's get Riddick on the pod.
I might be falling for Dain.
You might be falling for Dain. I'm even more annoyed with him after
remember, this is
chapters.
a broken kid. Okay, we're gonna get to it. Anyway.
We'll get to it. I do want to say quickly, actually, thinking about the epigraph a little bit more, she does spend a lot of chapter 4 thinking about the sparring ring and kind of dreading it. So I guess that kind of does add to the dread of like, hey, readers, this is what the sparring ring is. Like, you can die here. You can get very injured here. So kind of adding to that suspense for us as well.
Well, and like very good storytelling in a certain sense, because it really is that mindset. So this is me ripping from a different author entirely, but every big problem is just a series of smaller problems added back to back or lined up back to back. And so clearly, like, yeah, our girl has crossed the parapet. The next obstacle that she's gonna face is the fist coming at her on the sparring mat, right? That's the next place that she can die.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we will send it over to Cassie to discuss some of the Gaelic pronunciations of names we'll see in this chapter.
So we, as far as I noticed, only get one new word. What, two? Okay, well, I was reading very quickly before recording, but I realized how much I had to get through after all the other.
You might be thrown off because we talked about Skyle.
Oh, you're right.
Before her name is mentioned,
right.
But this is the first time her name is mentioned. Mm-hmm.
I definitely, when you're so familiar with stuff, you kind of forget that we haven't talked about it yet. Okay. So this is one of those words that I have a really hard time with this book, because I know the audiobook, or at least people who listen to the audiobook, tend to call her Sagale. Like there's an extra vowel in there.
The preference or the pronunciation I'm going to be using. Sagale is my girl.
That drives me nuts. This is one of those words that also, when I was first reading this, I was pronouncing in my head in sort of the Gaelic way, just kind of by accident, because I'd been like, that's the frame my brain was in when I was from learning Gaelic. But I didn't really realize that's what I was doing, or that this was attempting to be a Gaelic word. So the way I would pronounce this in a Gaelic-y way is scale. This is one where she has some fun with the spelling, and actually probably the actual Gaelic word is more like scal. That is one of the words where the vowel, the A, has a little backward accent on it. That means you drag out the vowel. And Gaelic has a lot of vowel pairs that don't really change the sound of the vowel that much. So it would just be scal. Because of the funky spelling, for this book, I tend to say scale. And this word, any guesses based on Zayden's signet what this word might mean?
Could it be shadow?
Oh my goodness, it might just be shadow.
I love how so much of this book could be spoiled if you just looked up what these names mean before you learn. Oh, I wonder what Zayden's signet is. And it's let's just get out our little dictionary, Violet, and we'll find out.
Yes, which is why I felt so silly when I didn't catch on until, well, I think we're going to get quite all the way through the book. Well, it's in one of the classes when they're talking about some of the dragon names, and I was looking at one of the names and I was like, I know that word. But all of the ones that I missed beforehand, I was just like, how? I've been saying them in Scottish Gaelic and I still didn't click. Mm-hmm. So the other one is much less interesting. It's the name of Dain's dragon, which is spelled Cath, which, as I mentioned previously, TH is usually not pronounced at all or very softly.
If you say this is ka, I'm gonna lose my mind.
So I think this word is supposed to be ka, but she didn't do any, pronunciation research. So I also just say Cath because this is an English book.
Amen.
See, I've always said Cath, and I will say for scale that I will be saying it probably a million different ways, because I don't think I ever had a unifying pronunciation in my head. I think I did Sagile, Sagale, Scale, Skyle. So I'll try to be internally consistent, but no promises.
That is fine.
So basically, you really are representing the audiobook at this moment, because that's about as consistent as they've been.
Love to hear
she had a lot of fun spelling that one in a weird way to make it confusing for everybody.
Is there anything to be said towards, we only know Segale's short name, we don't know her full name. And so I really wonder if she has some really cool, and this is again ripping from a completely different series, but what if it ends up being the last shadow? Because Segale is brutal, and she's going to be the last shadow any flying creature sees if they piss her off.
I kind of like that.
There are probably so many different ways that her long name could go. I am very curious.
I feel like Rebecca probably plays fast and loose with the longer versions of the names.
Which I guess we'll find out halfway through this book when Cassie gives us Taryn's full name.
Yeah, that one will be fun.
Like,
and Andarna's.
And Andarna's. Okay, Andarna's is also going to be very fun.
Because you got to remember, Taryn is Tarananaka of the Dub Medine line. And so, like, there's a whole... We get his entire lineage, and so we can maybe get a glimpse into... I have a feeling that eventually the full name of the dragon is going to give us more information than just shadow or fire or, like... Sorry.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
So,
I will say... Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Cassie.
So I never told you what Kath means. Or what Kath
Oh,
means.
yes, please.
And just for reference, I am using a Reddit post that someone very kindly collated all of the main Scottish words.
Do you have the username?
It is isolatedcolorYT. And their little flare says broccoli.
Love it.
Broccoli! Shout out to isolated color IT.
YT.
YT. Isolated color YT. Oh, I wonder if they're a YouTuber.
And we can link this because it is the original post is very thorough, and then there's a lot of really helpful responses in the comments. And so anyway, Ka means battle, which is another one of those very generic dragon names that tells us nothing about Dane's signet.
And so John's theory gets even more wishy-washy confirmation. Sorry.
Which theory?
The theory that the long name is what really... So, like, I feel like we're going to find out that Kat's full name is going to be something crazy like the largest battle or the worst battle or something oddball.
The final battle.
Just like the last shadow.
Yes. I do wonder, though, if we will ever get that information, because we do learn that the only person, or the only people that get the dragon's full name are the bonded rider, and then the scribe they tell the name to.
This is why I was wondering, like, we might get scales, because we do occasionally get Xaden's viewpoint. I don't know. We've gotten more people's viewpoint at the end of Onyx Storm, so it's possible that Dain will get thrown into that mix at some point. But will hearing the dragon's name be relevant at that point? Would it be kind of like shoehorning it in for us to know it?
Yeah.
Like for it to come up in the scene?
I guess there are a few times throughout the series where Taryn will get on his high horse and start to monologue about his full name, so I guess it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah, we'll just have
we are
to
starting to get different perspectives, so there is the opportunity that this might happen during Imogen's perspective or Rhiannon's perspective. I also have a really sneaking suspicion that after the 5 books are published, we're going to get a plethora of tertiary materials. And when I say tertiary materials, I think she's going to publish a tome of Orishan texts and a tome of like all the texts from all of the different countries. And so we're going to get a full copy of the Dragon Riders Codex, because like by the end of this, if she hasn't written herself a full copy of that, what is she helping herself?
Yeah, I can totally see her doing that. I could even see it between like the 4th and 5th books, perhaps, if there's not any spoilery material in them, to kind of tie people over, waiting for the final. Maybe even, who knows, maybe even between now and the 4th book, we might get a little additional something, Rebecca.
You never know.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. All right, so should we just jump in and get started?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right, so Chapter 4. We start off with Captain Fitzgibbons, who was the scribe that was at the roll table at the bottom of the staircase leading to the parapet. He is reading the death roll, which we learn is a daily occurrence during the morning formation. Violet is officially a cadet now. She's wearing her rider black, and she has a silver 4-point star indicating her year, plus a patch for the 4th wing. And then I put roll credits. That's the name of the book. So. So we learned that they're given standard uniforms, but not flight leathers yet, because they wouldn't be appropriate due to the fact that half of them won't even make it to threshing. So you don't get leathers until you pass threshing, which I actually had a question about that, because we do know that there are several second years who have survived threshing, but obviously aren't bonded to a dragon. So I put a note in to pay attention to what Sawyer is wearing, and I don't think that has been confirmed nor denied yet, because I'm wondering if you make it to threshing and survive threshing, yes, you didn't get a dragon, but here are some leathers, try again next year, or if it's, well, you gotta have a dragon.
There's also just noting that they're so wishy-washy on what could constitute dress code anyways, that, like, Sawyer might just have some leather pieces on him because he managed to gather them for himself over the course of trying to stay alive for 1 year, even if he didn't bond a dragon.
Fair.
Yeah, it does seem like they care more about, like, what they're going to bother to give you, and they don't really care so much about what you're wearing.
Yeah,
if you can find it for yourself, it's fair game. Otherwise, Violet's vest be violating
Isn't that
rules.
under her?
Oh, no, for sure. I'm not wondering about, like, dress code. I'm just wondering, like, are the first years who survived threshing but don't bond a dragon still issued leathers?
If I had to guess, I think you're right in the whole, they don't give anything unless it's absolutely necessary. And so until you have the opportunity to be in the sky, they're not going to give you flight leathers, I don't think.
See, and that's what I think too. It's just, it was worded a little bit dubiously, so I just wanted to get your guys' opinions.
Yeah.
Oh, she does say there are hundreds of modified uniforms. So, yeah. Clearly, it's not a thing that they're punishing anyone for.
Like my boyfriend Riddick,
As long as it's black.
who doesn't even bother to see the tailor. He just rips off his sleeves. Ugh.
I love it. I love it so much. I am slowly but surely falling in love with Riddick this reread. Sorry, John. I am married, so you can have him.
Right,
but
that's my
I
boyfriend.
will crush from afar.
That's my boyfriend.
All right. So 24 hours in, Violet has learned that hedonism and brutal efficiency run rampant due to the fact that every day could be their last. So some cadets be fucking last night, which I
Amen.
find very interesting because they're all in the open air barracks. But hey, get down with your bad self.
It's like being
do
in the
you.
dorms in college. Stuff just happens and no one is given any warning or...
Hey, if you're
Yep.
quiet enough and careful enough, no one will even know you're doing it.
No one needs to know.
Yeah, you
I
could
love it.
just be cuddling.
Violet notes that she lost count of how many names have been read out after Dylan's name was called. We remember poor, rest in peace, Dylan, who was confident he would survive and quickly fell from the parapet. And we learned that death roll is the only memorial and the last time that they are supposed to be spoken of again, which we all know that that's not the case. But I find that it's really interesting that there's so much of when people die, you're not supposed to say their name, you're supposed to burn all their stuff. It's almost like they don't exist for all intents and purposes.
Very suspicious.
Which, like, we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we get to certain epigraphs, for sure. But also, we're going to talk about Dylan one more time, but it's not going to be this book. It's going to be Iron Flame when Violet and Rhiannon when Violet has her little meltdown in front of Rhiannon and says, like, this place kills everybody so that we learn to face that death and just keep walking.
Yeah.
And so, like, I really do. You see all of these people on Instagram who are like, okay, I'm going to chronicle myself through this book. And the second video is always, Dylan! And every time I get to it, I'm like, who the fuck was Dylan?
Yep. It's so funny.
I always think that's so
I'm
funny.
so jaded of a reader that I don't even bother remembering his name.
Oh, I remember it, but for me, it was just like classic. Like, as soon as I Like, the first time I read it, as soon as he mentioned, like, his plans for after graduation and all his hopes,
I'm like, he's dead.
He's marked for death. Don't get attached.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he is not long for this
I
world.
had a bit of that as well.
Maybe it happened a little faster than I thought, but I was like, this isn't going to end well for him.
Yeah.
No, it never was.
Zinhal does not like to be... Zinhal? Where does the H go?
The H is before the N.
Okay, Zinhal does not like to be tempted.
No, Zinal does not like being tempted, but he does enjoy people who accept and embrace him.
Violet mentions that she would like to remember all of the names that are being read out, but there are just too many. Her skin is agitated from sleeping in her armor, and I made a little note. At least she was wearing a shirt under, or it could have been worse, which we discussed when we first talked about her attire.
Yeah, at least she's just, like, feeling the pressure of it and not, like, the actual...
Chafing.
Skin chafing, yeah.
Can you imagine sleeping in a corset? I hate corsets to begin with.
Oh, God.
I don't even like sleeping in a bra.
Same. No thank you. So, her knee still hurts, of course. She did manage to sneakily rewrap it in the barracks when everyone else was still sleeping. She doesn't want anyone to see her weaknesses, at least until she knows who she can trust. We get a little bit of layout information here, which I appreciate, so I will be sharing in my chapters. I don't know if you guys are going to skim over any of, like, the structural layout of things, but that's what I live for.
I will be skimming all of that.
I might jump in and be like, wait, but the library's on the left. So we learned that there are 3 floors of dorms. The first years are in open space barracks. The beds are in rows of 4, and there are 156 first year in Violet's first floor. So the first year dorms are all contained. We also learned that motherfucking Jack Barlow is on the 3rd floor, and always just need to keep an eye on him. We learned that, like their flight leathers, they aren't going to get any private rooms until after threshing, and I had kind of the same question. Does this count for the second years who survive threshing? Do they then get their own room but still have to repeat first year? Or do they have to go back in the barracks? So again, I put for myself to keep out an eye for where Sawyer sleeps just because I'm interested and want to know and have yet to confirm or deny.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I would say probably he's back in the barracks with the first years because it does sound for all intents and purposes, even though he's called a second year or a repeat or whatever, that they are essentially first years again.
Yeah, because he's still with all the first years in, like, formation and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they do get a private room, but then they have to go back to the barracks once the next... That's an interesting one.
I feel like they just wouldn't give privileges to anyone who hasn't passed and gotten a dragon yet.
That's fair.
And they do
why
kind of
invest
treat
in
them
them?
as scuttle help at that point. Like, they get the worst assignment of, of chores and things like that. So I could also see them being, yeah, okay.
So they're just stuck in the barracks.
Yup.
At least there's more room when other people bond.
You've ruined me, Abby. Now I'm gonna have to print out, like, giant wall-sized maps of the, like, writer's quadrant page and then, like, the Navarian map. And, like, I'm just gonna, at some point, but we're gonna have an actual battle brief where I'm gonna have a map with, like, flags in it and have to explain the flags are moving here now.
Follow us on Insta to see the map progress.
Don't worry, we might get to do a version of that next chapter.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm so tactile in the sense that I need to know where I am in this story and in this world, in this structure. So we come to the end of the list. Captain Fitzgibbon says, "We commend their souls to Malik," and that is all she wrote for those dead cadets.
Womp womp.
Oh, no, those dead conscripts.
Yeah, they were not cadets yet.
Oh, I guess except for the couple that were incinerated after they passed the
I
parapet.
suppose they were cadets for all of 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. In technicality. Do you think that there was a last roll call after formation as everyone went walking back into the barracks?
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's easier just to be like, so who are those that just got torched? Okay, I'll write them down.
So they are dismissed. Dain addresses his squad and says if you didn't eat breakfast, tough shit. Then he meets Violet's gaze before pretending he didn't. Rhiannon comments that he's good at acting like he doesn't know her, and I said, like being good at acting when he's reading Violet's memories, because I am on high fucking alert.
Right?
I'm
We
like,
spent 10 minutes discussing touching her, what was it, her neck or her
her
shoulder?
chin. Her chin.
Her chin.
It was
and
her
what-
chin, yeah.
So clearly we are on heightened alert, even though...
Yep.
Anyway.
We see those hands.
Where are your hands, Dain? Keep them where I can see them. So Violet takes in the view of handsome Dain and sees a scar on his chin that she did not notice beforehand, which his scar gets mentioned a lot, so I felt like that was an important
She's
note.
into scars.
I'm sorry, can I comment on something really quick here?
Please.
It's dawned on me. Violet's mind has already been read. We're sitting here watching Dain and his Haons, but the moment she stepped foot in front of Xaden, he was all up
Yeah.
in her intentions. Like, you know he was.
That's
Oh my
why
God.
when he was looking at the boots and he was like,
Why have we not been talking about
Is
that?
it because he's sexy?
It's because he's so hot, and I forgot.
So clearly, we are okay with one and not the other because Xaden is more sexy.
Well, no. It's because we know that Dain puts her in danger because he uses her power, and he doesn't consent, or he doesn't ask for consent. So, I mean, I guess initially Xaden doesn't either, but he is a lot more respectful and giving agency to Violet. So it doesn't
Okay.
feel like as much of an invasion to me.
Okay.
Personally.
In 2 chapters, we're going to get into this.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me that I have biases as well, and I need to check my implicit
I feel
biases.
like we need to, cut in that video of Rebecca Yarros at the... I don't even remember what talk back it was, where she literally calls an audience on, is it 'cause he's sexy? And, just clip that in there.
Oh, absolutely. Editing Abby here. Here is the clip that we were referencing. I pulled this from Instagram at Book Talk for Book Talk, which is a fellow podcast. It is Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. This clip is coming from the Q&A with Rebecca Yarros on January 21st, 2025 in Los Angeles at the Novo.
Who would you say is your least favorite character and why?
I love Dain. Whoever said that, wash your mouth out. Dain is an imperfect 21-year-old kid
Yes.
who trusted his dad
Yep.
and is a little overprotective, telling his chronically ill friend to sit the fuck down. Okay? And you know what? I'm sorry, but
We
as
all
someone-
have some Dain
Yes.
in us.
And I am, as being a chronically ill person, there are people we love that tell us to sit the fuck down, and we're like, stop it. But doesn't mean we don't love them anymore. And yes, he invaded her privacy, but so did Xaden, and y'all don't seem to mind that. Is it because he's hot? Double standards. Okay?
Okay, so now I want to go back and what were her intentions when she was crossing the
I
parapet?
just remember.
Oh, she intended to live. She intended not to step down. She was not going to die
Yeah,
a coward. There were certain things that passed through her mind that
Sure.
were, very strong. And so that clearly is what inspired the rest of it, I think.
I also remember when he looks down at her boot and then I don't know if he smiles or just relaxes or what.
he relaxes, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a moment there where I'm like, oh, he's reading that she's not as caught up in all of these politics as her mom and sister are. She's just here to survive, and she's even helping other people along the way,
Yeah,
which is probably not what he was expecting from her family.
I like that take.
I do too.
And that could be an intentions thing, or it could just be he's reading what her boot means. I feel like both are options.
Okay, so Violet notices scribes heading back to their quadrant and feels a twinge of regret, but realizes that wallowing won't do her any favors. Dain then tells the first years to stick together and that he expects them to all be alive when they meet back up in the sparring gym. We learned
Sorry.
We learned that they get the gym 2 times a week. Violet reasons that if she can make it through today, she'll be good for at least a few days. She also mentions the looming gauntlet, described as a vertical obstacle course, which they'll have to start training on in 2 months' time. The training on the gauntlet culminates in the final gauntlet, and we'll later learn that during the final gauntlet, they are not allowed to climb down, and it is timed. So at that point, it is do or die. Following the final gauntlet, they will parade in front of all the available dragons willing to bond in what they call presentation, and then 2 days after that is threshing, where the bonding occurs. So Violet wonders who, if any of them, will make it to that point, and surprise, the majority of them will, and they will actually have the most surviving first years and be the Iron Squad. Love that. A smartass first year, which I wrote, Riddick, with hearts all around him immediately, asks, what if they aren't all alive by sparring? And Dain casually says, then it's one less name for him to learn. A second year laughs, and we only get the description that the second year has 2 small hoop earrings in her left lobe, and I believe that this is Quinn, but I'm not positive.
Nope, because it says right after, but the pink-haired one stays silent. So this is not...
so one of them's
Oh,
the pink-haired one is Imogen. Mm-hmm.
I heard
But
Quinn
so the earrings one
there.
laughs and Imogen doesn't.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Imogen doesn't think this is funny.
I heard Imogen when you said Quinn.
So, I can't remember, besides the curly blonde hair, any of Quinn's descriptions, so I'm going to keep an eye out and see if that be her later, because I like seeing, like, oh, that's this character that we end up learning more about later.
I'm like 99.99999% sure that this is Quinn, because Quinn and Imogen are such...
Thick as thieves.
Yeah, them being mentioned
such
together
friends.
makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Dain then calls to Sawyer, which I underlined a million times, who is a first-year repeat due to not being bonded last year. Sawyer is described as tall and wiry with a light complexion and freckles. He says he'll get the rest of the first years through the day. Dain dismisses them and splits off with the second and third years, while Sawyer tells the 8 first years that they have 20 minutes to get their shit and get to class. Rhiannon and Violet sympathize over Sawyer being a repeat, and the smartass remarks it's better than being dead. And this is when we learn that his name is Riddick. Riddick is described as having floppy dark brown hair and brown skin. And I wrote that I absolutely love how the first 3 that we're introduced to by name end up being our core dream team.
And my boyfriend.
And your boyfriend.
Want to just run my hand through those curls.
Oh, God, I love him so much. Rhiannon confirms that first years who survive but are unbonded can choose to repeat and try again, which reasons that they can also choose to leave. And I wonder if they are put into a different quadrant at that point, or if it's like, well, you tried, thank you for your service, you're discharged. Probably put into another quadrant would be my guess.
That was my understanding is, hey, you lived, we'll give you a chance to step away if you want to. No shame, but you just get to go finish the rest of your tenureship in one of these other quadrants that doesn't require a lifetime service, but also doesn't require being chosen by an ancient mythical being that knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yep, and not as high a risk of dying while you're still in school.
While you're still in school. I can agree with that.
I also had a question. I do wonder if any of these repeats, if they go through their first year and again do not bond but survive, are they given that choice again? Or at that point, are they like, okay, you failed twice, you gotta get out of here?
I would presume that they don't make it there. And so I feel like Rebecca Yarros would answer this with, you get to presentation the second time, you get to threshing the second time, and some dragon is going to look at you and say, we have all deemed you non-worthy twice in a row. We're not letting this go on any further. You're dead.
Yeah. That makes the most sense to me.
I feel like remember this coming up when we get to threshing. I remember there were stakes around whether the repeats were bonding or not, but I can't remember what they actually were.
Another thing to keep in the back of our heads as we do this reread. Violet notes that even as a repeat first year, they can still die, so there is that risk reward benefit there. I said that really weird. There's that, whatever, you get what I'm saying. Then Violet hears a bird call, which she quickly recognizes as Dain. She sees him at the top of a staircase, and he motions for her to meet him through a door.
Real quick, this whole bird call thing works really well if you're outside. I'm wondering, does anyone else just like look around and be like, why is there a songbird in the rotunda? Or is this like, are there just birds there all the time? Like, it's
Good question. I am looking.
I definitely feel like people would call him out.
I think the rotunda.
Is it open to air?
Yeah, I think the rotunda is open air.
Okay.
Yeah, to the.
Because I
courtyard.
always pictured
I
this
believe
as like
so.
an inside big circle room, which
So did I, and it does look like it has a roof over it in the picture.
Yeah, I think
it can have
has
a roof without having walls though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always pictured it as indoors. It does have doors.
Remember, Dain is smart, but he ain't the brightest box or the brightest crayon in the box.
Fair. Well, no one else seems to notice, at least, so we get that. Then Rhiannon, in true ride or die friend of the year fashion, tells Violet to go on ahead and she'll grab her stuff for her. Violet goes to where Dain indicated and sees that there are not many cadets in the area, so she's able to sneak into the rotunda.
Yeah, there are doors, and it's talking about doors into other wings, and there's a roof. It doesn't say walls anywhere.
So maybe Dain signaled her before they were inside. Like, maybe he just signaled her right outside the building.
That's what I was thinking too.
She hears it near the door.
Oh, the door to the rotunda, and he's standing
at the top of the
top of the white staircase.
Yeah. See, this is why I just don't.
He's motioning toward the rotunda, so he's still outside. Okay.
Y'all nitpicking what direction they're coming from when they walk up to a door.
Hey, well, now we know. Okay. So she is able to sneak into the rotunda, and she is stunned by its beauty. I wanted to just read a little bit of this description for you all. The room is 3 stories tall, from its polished marble floors to the domed glass ceiling that filters in the soft morning light. To the left are 2 massive arched doors to the academic wing, echoed by the same on the right, leading to the dorms. And up half a dozen steps, there are 4 doorways in front of me that open into the gathering hall. Equally spaced around the rotunda, shimmering in their various colors of red, green, brown, orange, blue, and black, stand 6 daunting marble pillars carved into dragons, as if they'd come crashing down from the ceiling above. There's enough room between the starling mouths at the base of each to fit at least 4 squads in the center, but it's empty right now. And I was wondering, do we think that there was ever an Irid carving here, or do we think that the Irids bounced before Basgiath was built?
I feel like the dragon sculptures were put in a while after Basgiath was founded. I don't feel like they were original. Because it takes time to build a school once you decide to put one there. And I feel like really pretty artistic statues of dragons is low on people's priority. Yeah.
Fair. Dain grabs and pulls Violet behind the red dragon statue, which I noted, that's like Cath, like his dragon, which I thought was a little interesting note there. And he is tense. We learned that bird call has been his MO signal since they lived by the Croveland border as kids. He then tells her that they have to be quick before asking about her knee. She tells him it does hurt, but she'll live, knowing it's far from the worst injury she's ever had. He asks if anyone screwed with her last night. She makes an innuendo about screwing, but he's not in a joking mood. So She confirms that everyone was too exhausted after parapet for any murder attempts, but they were not too tired for some
I was
hedonism.
gonna say, those growing did still happen in other bunks.
I wrote, Dain is still mother henning and asking if she ate. She confirms that she did, and also she's used to being up an hour earlier, like the scribes, so she had time to wrap her knee and braid her hair before anyone else was awake. And she mentions volunteering for breakfast duty, which we know is how she will poison her opponents later.
So our girl already be scheming. If she can just make it through one day, she can poison everyone that follows.
Dain tells her she should cut her hair, which she has heard before, but she's having none of it, saying she has bigger concerns than someone grabbing her hair while sparring. He tells her that he's just trying to keep her safe, then says he wanted to shove her into Captain Fitzgibbon's hands to take her away.
Like a little package to mail to safety.
Yes! Which I found very, infantilizing and like, oh, so I'm just a thing to be sent.
He's still rationalizing. We're still stuck in the rationalizing phase.
I know. And again, I think my first time reading this, I wasn't quite irritated with him. I was like, oh, he's so sweet. But now I'm just like, knowing what Violet can do and what she's capable of, I'm like, this is so unnecessary, my guy.
Yes.
Violet asks Dain why their squad was moved from the second wing to the fourth wing, and he tells her that obviously Xaden wants her dead. Violet believes that her theory of Xaden wanting a direct line to her is confirmed, but as we talked about beforehand, it's most likely so he can keep her protected as much as he possibly can. Mm-hmm. At this point, Dain cups her face, his thumb stroking over my cheekbone in a soothing motion. And we get our
first Dain confirmed reading.
Are you sure?
It does say cheek and not temple. Those are very close.
They're very close, because we do learn, like, in 2 pages that he has to, at this point at least, put his hands on someone's temples. What do you think that he would be reading in her memories right now, though, if it is
so, and again,
a use of his signet?
Here's what I'm using as my justification for this belief here. When Violet got her dreamwalking ability, she inherently developed it on what was the human being that she fixated the most of her attention on, Xaden, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have another intrinsic adjacent individual who has the ability to read minds, and it's growing. He's just inherited or just gotten this ability. He's honing it. It's growing still because his bond with his dragon is still solidifying and growing. Mm-hmm. And so I very much believe that this is actually one of those moments where he didn't do it on purpose. Mm-hmm. But he's so concerned about what's going through her mind that as soon as he puts hands to her face, it just flashes in there, and he gets, I just think he gets a flash of whatever's foremost in her mind. He doesn't dig, he just gets a flash, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's an accidental, inherent development of the skill.
I can see that, especially how you liken it to with Violet's dreamwalking, that she first does it with Xaden.
Yeah, I do like the accidental.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I would be very curious to learn the first mind that Xaden read.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Sorry.
I like it. Anyways, Dain says he won't let anything happen to her, which, again, my guy. Violet correctly says there's not much he can do. She's about to leave when he lectures her some more, telling her to keep a low profile, especially in battle brief, because everyone takes it all at once. He starts talking about... Remember how I said that I was going to start typing my notes because I can't read my handwriting?
Let me guess that you didn't do that.
I did. There's something about writing with a pen, well, even a stylus on my tablet, that it just... I don't know. It just does it better for me than...
Let's be perfectly clear.
Typing.
1 year of economics note-taking is stored on this iPad. That pencil is there for a reason.
Okay, I can read it now. I sussed it out. Dain starts talking about assigning her, that's the word I was hung up on, assigning her a second-year bodyguard. And I wrote, that's funny because Liam ends up being her bodyguard later, and she is annoyed with it, but I don't think is as irritated with the idea.
She's had some assassination attempts.
That's fair. That is fair.
She hasn't even gone to her first class yet, and she's trying to post a guard outside the door.
Yep.
Well, and like I would call out as well that Xaden, we get a really good glimpse into the comparison of our two gentlemen here. Mm-hmm. How do I put this gently? Dain wants to put a second year, someone who's senior to her, in a special position that they're not supposed to be in, without reason, versus, and like is discussing it with her, which is like really funny because to him it might not be up to discussion. Xaden doesn't discuss it with her, doesn't give her warning, and assigns someone who is natural to the setting to be her shadow.
Yeah.
And because it's not up for discussion, Violet never gets a say. Xaden doesn't even let her have the conversation.
You make a great point, though, that he's assigning a peer to her. Someone
not
who...
a second year.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's such a good point. I didn't even think about that.
When I was just reading this now, this did make me feel like he's trying to get her to keep a low profile. But then he also is suggesting, let's do something out of the ordinary so that everyone who walks into your class sees all these special privileges that you're getting and hates you even more.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Especially since he's going to lose his cool very shortly, and everyone will know that they have a history.
Yeah. Also, back to the face cupping thing, she doesn't react to this weirdly. So, have they just been touching each other's faces their whole childhood? Like, that doesn't feel like a normal friend thing to do to me.
Possibly,
but like they grew up
or,
like siblings to a certain extent.
Or it might be because there is definitely some sexual tension between them, so they are just kind of leaning more into the touch and the flirtation.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if this is like them leaning into it now, and so they're not really commenting on it, or like were they also doing that before, even though they were seeing other people at different times?
I could see it either way.
I was just curious about how normal of an action this is.
I'm guessing
portrayed.
it's something that is newer to them, but not super. It's not as new as Violet entering the quadrant. I'm gonna guess that they maybe got a little bit like this right before Dain went into the quadrant, and so it kind of feels like an extenuation. I will also call out, in this particular moment in Violet's mind, she thinks that she is in love with Dain and not with anyone else.
Yeah.
And so having her face cupped by someone that she thinks also, like, she knows also has emotions for her.
She wouldn't, like,
question.
She wouldn't question it. But she doesn't, like, mention, oh, this is nice either. Like, she doesn't really comment on it at all, which is why I was getting the impression that this seems like a very normal interaction somehow, which is weird to me. This doesn't feel like...
Maybe they're more used to touch, maybe not necessarily face touching, because that does feel rather intimate.
Yeah.
Intimate?
Infinite.
Yeah, that's a word. It feels rather intimate. And so that could be the fact of, okay, well, we are used... I mean, he was, like, stroking her back yesterday, and that seemed relatively normal. So maybe it is just the face stuff that's kind of newer, so it is still familiar touch. And I think Dain might just have a greater inclination to touch people's faces with his signet, knowing that's what his power is, potentially.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. Like, because I don't think Dain is walking around touching everybody's faces. Because if I was just walking into parties, putting my hands on everyone's face to learn what's going through their brain, people can call me out.
But maybe because it's Violet, he feels like he has a good reason to.
I still think that it was entirely accidental. I think that he cupped her face because he wants to show, like, he specifically called out the day before that the one thing he was looking forward to was the ability to be able to go see Violet safe in the archives.
Scribe?
Scribe hoods. And so, like, I honestly think that he had it in his mind that they were going to begin their relationship in these various positions, and he still wants this relationship to be there, but if she stays in the quadrant, he can't have it. He can't let himself break the rules like that, because he's convinced himself it's ride or die by the set of rules that his father rides and dies by.
I have a fun note about Dain and the rules a little bit later in this chapter, so I don't want to spoil it because I giggled to myself when I wrote it down. Okay, anyways. Violet brushes off the idea of assigning a second year to her. She says that no one is going to hurt her during class. She feels academics are quite literally the least of her worries. Dain says Xaden might because he's fucking ruthless, which is the reason the blue Daggertail bonded him, and this is when we learn it's Gale, and we love her. She's a queen.
She's vicious.
She's vicious. Ugh, I love her. Dain says that his dragon, Kath, I think that is just, I'm not even going to try.
No, I mean, Kath makes the most sense.
Yeah. His dragon Kath is a red swordtail and can also get nasty, but even other dragons keep their distance from Scale, which shows that she is a particularly bad case.
Curmudgeon.
Violet takes a moment to realize that so much has changed in the past year, and she's having a hard time reconciling who the new Dain is with the Dain that she knows, or who he is now with the Dain she knows, is what my notes say. Dain says he hasn't changed that much. He can do lesser magic. Hi, Kara! It's our sister, Kara!
She just announced you.
Shout out to Kara on the pod. Love you. Happy birthday.
She says happy birthday.
Thank you.
Did you tell her I said happy birthday on Friday?
I did. I told her, and she said thanks to both of you.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So Dain can do lesser magic, and although his signet is powerful, he still needs to train it. And at this point I wrote, and although his skills are great, he's got a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. I don't know if you guys catch the Avatar reference.
Yes, I was going to say, that's very familiar. Why is that familiar?
But I believe Dain can save the world.
Not to mention the fact that right after this we get this fire wielding, ice wielding, water wielding. There's wind wielders and fire wielders and water wielders. Where are my earth wielders?
Imogen!
Imogen. Yep.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, we'll find out what hers is. I have thoughts about that. That's not for a long time, you guys. It's going to be like 3 years from now. Anyways. So yes, we do learn that some signets are more common than others. Some are rarer. Seems like the elemental magic tends to be more common, but not so much storms / lightning. More of your more basic elements, I guess you could say. So Violet asks Dain about his signet. We learn that signets are the unique ability that stands out, the strongest skill that results from each unique bond between dragon and rider. Violet wonders what Xaden's signet is and if he'll use it to kill her. And I wrote, nope, but he will be using it to kill a lot of other people.
Very soon.
Conveniently, Xaden doesn't wear any patches on his uniform, so he is given nothing away. Dain divulges that he is able to read recent memories, but distinguishes himself from Intrinsics, who can read minds, so he's not a security risk. He has to put his hands on someone's temples, which is how it's stated, at least at this point.
Right now, he just says
Put
hands on the person.
that I was going to call this out when we got to it.
He does initially 2 paragraphs later. He says, I just put my hands on someone's temples and I can see what they saw. It's incredible. Because I initially wrote that too and I'm like, confirmed! But then it was like, no, okay, temples.
I do remember that he specifically said temples. I just didn't catch it right here that it sounded like he was just being like, giving a summary. Also note that he says recent at this point, and I feel like the power is reading memories, but he's at the stage where he can only get recent.
Recent is a very vague
arbitrary.
Term. Yeah.
Very arbitrary.
And I can't recall how close together the incident of Xaden telling her Athbine or Athabine, however you say that, versus...
I feel like it was like the next day or maybe a few hours later.
Okay.
Well, and so if we're gonna have that conversation, then I also want to have the conversation about the fact that in Iron Flame, Jack Barlow places a bunch of lures all over the valley of Basgaith, and that can't have happened in a short period of time. That had to have been something he'd been working on for a while. And so my suspicion is, again, at this particular moment, as far as Dain is concerned, he can only go back a couple of weeks, let's say, or even a week. But I also believe that this is one of those cases where his signet is growing far faster than we actually get let onto until we see him go into Jack Barlow's mind. Motherfucking Jack Barlow. I can't believe we're already talking.
Jack Barlow.
We're talking about him and he hasn't even come back in really yet. Anyway.
I know.
But
he's the bane of my existence.
I feel like I remember at some point, I mean, we're not in Dane's perspective for any of it, but I feel like I get the sense that he's like, I think it was when he was reading Violet's memories at one point where that he has to like dig through to get back to the point where the information that he wants is.
Well, where he has to like...
And he like has to do more effort to get deeper. So I feel like right now it's recent. He can only see the surface level stuff. Mm-hmm. But as he develops it, he can get deeper in.
And like part of it too is I think he has... Think about the rationality that Violet used to take control of his power like that. He has to get through what she's actively thinking that moment to get to anything else. And so that could also be it, is like maybe he hasn't figured out that he also has the ability to like control that active recall and make it so that, no, I don't want you to focus on this, I want you to focus on that. And it becomes like
that's right.
Whose mind is stronger.
Yeah. You were mentioning Jack Barlow and the recency of the lures. Were you insinuating that it had to have been early on because Dain didn't seem to get that information from him when interrogating him?
No, because I don't think that Dain actually interrogated Jack Barlow until that moment. Like, I don't think that Dain ever actually used his powers on Jack Barlow until that moment. Because they wanted to contain the fact that he was a Venin. And they couldn't let, like... Anyway. Well, the timeline just doesn't work out like that.
Okay.
The moment that he found out Jack Barlow, or that Venin were even real, was the moment that they escaped Basgaith. And then Jack Barlow comes back and, like, yeah, I don't think that Dain ever got the chance to interrogate Jack Barlow.
Sure. Sorry, why were you bringing up the wars then?
Oh, it was the recency of it. Jack Barlow has a shift in character after he dies and comes back to the Quadrant, and it largely centers around the fact that he realizes if he had died, his mission would have been a failure. And he has promised his father that he is going to help bring the War College down once and for all. And so, in a lot of ways, I think that Jack Barlow realized after he got the permission to join the, or like maybe even through communication was given instruction that his priorities changed now. He just needed to get the other Venin in. And they would take care of what he could no longer do himself. And so I think he starts placing the lures as soon as he gets out of the infirmary and is returned to the Quadrant. And after he returns to the Quadrant, he starts slowly placing the lures so that he doesn't get caught doing it. And so we go from, like, the only reason I mention the lures is just because we go from this moment where he thinks he can only go back so far to he actually spans multiple months in someone's mind with exerted efforts. And so his power is growing over time, and we don't see it because we don't have these obvious moments that will link how far back were those memories that he actually dug into.
Got it.
Spiel John went on a spiel.
So speaking of interrogation intelligence, Dain does think that his signet will be used as an intelligence tool, so it is classified, and we learned that classified signets get a compass patch. Then
This year,
okay.
later we find out that patches change year by year.
But I thought the signet patches stayed the same.
That it was my understanding that was the patch that they were specifically saying changed year by year.
Okay.
My assumption was like the wing patches and the like super standardized patches were going to be very just did not invariant, but the patches that were tied to these weird powers that are so different from one another in some cases meant that they would use a different patch system every year. But who knows? Maybe all ice wielders have the same.
Let's keep an eye on it. So Dain has finished talking about his signet, and then says, quote, "This place can warp almost everything about a person, Vi. It cuts away the bullshit and the niceties, revealing whoever you are at your core. They want it that way. They want it to sever your previous bonds so your loyalty is to your wing. It's one of the many reasons that first years aren't allowed to correspond with their family and friends. Otherwise, I would have written to you. But a year doesn't change that I still think of you as my best friend. I'm still Dain, and this time next year, you will still be Violet. We will still be us." And I wrote, "Oh," because they will not quite be the same.
Yeah.
Violet jokes that they will still be besties only if she stays alive. Is at this point that the bell rings and they have got to go. Dain tells her that Xaden will find a way to kill her within the rules of the Codex. When others are around, he will have to find a way to kill her within the rules of the Codex, due to being a wing leader. He knows this because he was good friends with Amber Mavis last year, who was the wing leader for third. So I missed this beforehand. I probably wouldn't have even caught it if we didn't, in our last recording session, talk about how Amber Mavis is the one who got all of the unbonded riders into Violet's room. So I wrote in my notes here that this makes so much more sense to me why that A, Dain doubted Violet, and B, why he doubted that Amber would break the Codex, because he intimately knows her, and mentions here that he knows that they hold the Codex in high regard because he was good friends with Amber last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the first or second read that I caught that, but I do remember when he's so upset and disbelieving about the attempt and just being like, it's because you're biased. You have your own perception of who she is, and you couldn't believe that she might like have other sides to her, have other motivations, and like you're all out here willing to kill people. So
yeah, I also find that it's really funny that Amber, besides the fact that she does break the Codex by aiding and abetting this midnight murder attempt, at least, she is shown like right after the final gauntlet as being like a huge stickler for the rules. And I'm like, Dain, I don't know if that it's all the wing leaders are a stickler for the Codex or if it's just you and Amber. And so you have like this sense.
Yeah, I had the same thought.
So Violet walks out from behind the pillar and she starts towards the academic building before her spidey senses start tingling, which is what I'm now going to refer to as when she knows that Xaden is around. She looks up the steps and oh shit, there he is. He has a third year next to him whom he is ignoring, and I believe that's probably Garrick because they are almost never separated.
So I was going to call this out a little bit earlier when we got to Segale's little spiel. I know we spent so long on this one conversation behind a statue. But, like, earlier we got the little bit
I
that,
think
like,
all of my episodes are going to be the longest. Sorry, guys.
It happens. Earlier we got this, like, tidbit that other dragons avoid Segale, much like her rider is often avoided by other riders. And so...
Good point.
The fact that we see someone with Xaden, it absolutely is either going to be Bodhi or Garrick, depending on what year they are.
Oh, 100% agree. That's a great point. Xaden is looking at Violet with narrowed eyes. His massive arms are displayed and crossed over his chest, which I love that she can't help but notice. He has massive arms and they aren't constrained by sleeves, and I'm so wooning. Violet panics, wondering if he's about to kill her here, right in front of everybody. Her fingers twitch towards her dagger, so she is getting ready. He studies her, and she thinks about running before Dain steps out. Uh-oh. And Xaden smiles cruelly and asks if they have to be so fucking obvious. And I have a little note here. I'm like, is he a little jealous, do we think? I think he might be a little jealous.
Yes. Yes.
So Xaden mocks them, wondering whether they are just childhood friends or first loves. Violet whispers to Dain about the codex, and this is where I put, which is essentially Dain's dirty talk. He's like, oh, yes, Violet, yes, baby, whisper the codex to me.
I'm sorry, what?
I told you that it was worth it.
Oh.
I'm like, nothing gets him going more than whispering quotes from the codex.
Oh, so really I am destined to be with Dain.
Yep, match made.
I was gonna say this really reminds me of when Abby, when you made that 10-minute long video to send to us, I was just like,
You're like, this
keep
is hot.
citing at me. Just keep sending those citations.
Honestly, I think it's all of us, really. So maybe we're all just Dain. Which I don't love. Anyways, moving on. So this codex quotation is from Article 4, Section 3, which basically states that leadership cannot be messed with without cause and without calling a quorum of the wing leaders, which is relevant to Amber, who was just mentioned the page before. Dain confirms that this is true, but obviously this doesn't apply to Violet. Xaden starts sauntering down the steps. That's my headcanon, at least. He is sauntering down those steps, mocking Dain that he expected he'd be better at hiding it, and then Dain tells her to run, which she does, which I think is a overreaction personally,
Yeah.
but that's the end of the chapter.
This is the chapter where we get the phrase of, like, whoever you are at your core, that goes on to drive me nuts when people are hypothesizing about Violet's signet later. Like, I heard that phrase so many times, and I was like, can we just talk about it with any...
Who is she at her core?
Oh my gosh. So I just had to call that out.
But then, I really want to call out something. In Onyx Storm, I think we started getting a little bit of a hint of the fact that, even what we think we know about dragons and dragon bonds isn't entirely accurate. Because Sigale tells us at this book that it's actually a blend of the dragon and the rider.
Mm-hmm.
And to explain the writer's portion, they have this, what you're at your core. But then, in Onyx Storm, we get the comment of, it makes sense that Indarna gifted Violet dreamwalking because it's such a passive power.
We also learn, more emphasis put on it later, that the signet also develops according to what they need. So not just necessarily who they are, but what they are needing at the point that it
and she
develops or manifests.
In her soul, needed to communicate with the dragon she was bonded to that was, not there and was supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts on chapter 4 before we close out? All right. Well, then, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Wing Readers. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at The Wing Readers, or you can send us an email at thewingreaders@gmail.com. It would mean the world to us for you to subscribe and rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday. We'll see you in Chapter 5.